And here we are. It's a Thursday morning edition of Dualistic Unity Raw. Almost forgot the name of my own goddamn podcast there. That's funny. Um, Wanted to say good morning to everybody first off. I don't know if it's morning, noon, night, whatever period of light and dark it might be for you. Great to see you, slash, know you're there. It's funny. See you. I actually have an image of you in my mind. It doesn't have a face or clothing or anything like that. It's not naked per se, but it's just kind of an image that has no detail, but it has awareness of itself. And it feels all the same things that I feel. It's just in a very different environment. And part of that environment is, in fact, all the details of its body. And so when I'm talking to you, that's how I see you. And what's odd is that that's exactly how I see you, even when you're in front of me, because I know the details aren't who you are. You are not your face. You are not your clothing. You are not the person that you even think you are, which is really quite nice to know. That said, I've been super fucking lazy for like the last 3 weeks. I just wanted to mention that. I'm throwing that out there because I had gotten into a really good groove in terms of drinking lots of water, doing exercises several times a day. And again, for short bursts. I'm not the kind of person who's saying, like, I'm going to exercise for the next hour, 2 hours. I'm just not that kind of person anymore. I can't do that for a number of reasons, including the fact that I just don't fucking want to. But over the last month or so, as you know, I've been super busy. I've had to move. There's been a bunch of changes in my life. My daughter's going through changes in her life. And then, of course, everything else going with Dualistic Unity. The Netherlands, everything up to the Netherlands just tired me right the fuck out because there was a lot that went into that event. And then, yeah, I just stopped doing all of those things where I was being so active and proactive in terms of my health and how I was doing with my body and stretching and doing all that. You know what I'm saying? Mindfully living. And I wasn't doing that as much because, frankly, I was stressed the fuck out. So what I was doing was, I don't know, I was smoking weed. I would tend to reach for a lot more in terms of food. That's one thing, is to be like, fuck, stressed. I'm going to eat something while I'm doing this work that I can't stop doing. And so I found myself reaching towards things that were not necessarily great for me in a certain degree of moderation. I wasn't going overboard by any means, but I did notice that I was more likely to reach for something that comforted me through the stress rather than something that was uncomfortable, but I knew would pay off in the long run. And what's funny about that is I'm really good with that because as of a couple of days ago, I started exercising again. I'm getting back in the groove, drinking lots of water. I'm feeling better. And I say better, but I'm feeling different. I'm feeling more active. Now, what's funny is that I'm not doing anything there really to go, well, I gotta get back in the groove. I've been fucking lazy. What the fuck's wrong with me? I'm not doing any of that. I just recognized that, oh wow, I had a bunch of stress. And so I was doing my best through that stress, coping a little, maybe, letting a few things slide out of necessity because priorities dictated so. And then when those stresses were gone, I naturally just kind of go back towards it. And it's really important, I think, to recognize this because so often we think, well, fuck, I haven't been taking my care of myself at all. I'm not making time to go to the gym. I'm not making time, to hang out with my friends. I'm not making time for myself. All I'm doing is fucking binge eating or binge watching or doom scrolling or fucking drinking or all that stuff. And it's like, yeah, that's true. But maybe it's not because of some fault with you, but because of how much stress you're dealing with. Maybe it's just about recognizing how much you are dealing with as a whole in your life. And then either trying to remove some of that or recognizing that it won't last forever. So rather than beating yourself up while you're doing what you need to do to survive what you need to survive, give yourself a little empathy and recognize that it's not going to last forever. And when it's gone, the real test is whether or not you can actively, with awareness, let those coping mechanisms go, knowing that they were only there to deal with the stress and they are not part of your identity. And that's what makes it easier. It's not part of your identity. Like, I've been really lazy the last 4 months. That doesn't make me lazy, right? It just means that I haven't been as active. See, it's a description of what I've been doing or not doing, not a description of me, because I can change at any point, and the same is true for you. So what I'm saying is, instead of beating yourself up for not being good enough, for not being active enough, for not being smart enough, for not being diligent enough, not being disciplined enough, look at your life. Look at your life. Ask yourself, how much are you juggling? How much of it is just in your head? Let what you can go. And what you'll find is you have far more energy and attention to do the things that you think you should be doing, but you're not going to do them because you should be doing them. You're going to be doing them because you have the energy and the awareness and the priority to do so, not because you're beating yourself up, but because you actually feel like it with enthusiasm. Like this morning, I got up, did some push ups, did some curls, did some squats, did all that. I don't have that written down like wake up, do push-ups, do curls. No, I got up and went, oh yeah, okay, I'm kind of feeling it. And I just did it. Had nothing to do with I should do this and everything to do with the fact that I wasn't dealing with, oh fuck, okay, I still gotta move at the end of the day, and then I gotta get in touch with the hydro bill, and then I gotta get in touch with the movers and the maintenance guy. Like as soon as you wake up thinking about that shit, you don't feel like exercising. You don't. And it's not that you can't, by all means. If you can, push yourself to do so. But if you can't, don't assume it's because there's something wrong with you. Don't beat yourself up for it. Show yourself some fucking empathy. Take in your life. Go, oh yeah, well, that's a lot of stuff. Okay, let's get some of that off my fucking plate. And then tomorrow, push-ups.
Oh yeah. It's funny because I did a very similar thing this morning. Like I'm someone who typically, has gone to the gym when I work out, doing the 1 to 2 hour sort of thing at the gym at once. And I'm sort of just as I relax, realizing how much that is like very reflective of a way for me to feel better about myself and just like avoid myself in a sense. And but this morning I was like, oh yeah, but there's still things I can do. And like I'm at, as I said yesterday, like at my grandma's house looking for an apartment in the city right now. And I got up and just did push-ups. And then she doesn't have any like pull-up bar or anything, but she has like this floor basically where the stairs go that you can kind of hang off. And so I just like hung off of that. I did that. And I just did a little circuit. And then, I a couple leg things more so for out of a feeling than out of like a built like building muscle. It's like there's certain things that I know I have imbalances, and so like focused a couple things on those, just did a couple circuits. And it was like before I didn't even have my glasses or contacts on or anything, was like still in my underwear, and just did that. My grandma's not here, by the way. I'm not like running around her house in my underwear doing like circuit workouts. She's like in the kitchen, and I'm just no regard, have like headphones on, just doing laughs. And she's just like, oh, all right. No, she's yeah. She's like, she's fingers as she's in the kitchen, like hanging off. She's like, what the fuck is that motherfucker doing? Anyway,
Walk
so
by, you're like, morning, Granny.
oh my god. That said, she did have someone coming to the house. That's so funny because she did have a neighbor who was coming to feed a feral cat that doesn't come inside anymore. Kind of told that story on Patreon yesterday. She let it in when she was back for a week, a couple weeks ago. Peed all over her bed a bunch. So she has a woman who comes to feed the cat, a neighbor, friend, and she did show up when I was more or less in the middle of that sort of thing. Like she opened, all of a sudden I hear a light go on or see a light go on and hear the door open. And I'm like, I kind of like am in the room next to it, and I peek around and I'm like, I don't have a shirt on. And she's like, oh, and I'm like, hey, what's up? Are you here to help with the cat or anything? She's like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like, I didn't realize you were here. And I was like, yeah, I talked to my grandma yesterday. She didn't mention you'd be here, but I was aware that someone was coming to the house, so it wasn't like total like, who is someone fucking breaking in the house right now? So that also happened, and I have some other thoughts just with the workout stuff and the identity stuff, but the it's interesting because I've noticed the less I'm rigid with my routine, because like I mentioned it a few times early on the podcast, like I started working out when I was 13 and basically didn't go a, a more than maybe a week or two max without like consistently being in the gym lifting weights. It was just kind of like this habitual thing that very much like, it's, I'm like, fuck, this is, I would contort it into like, it's healthy, but it was majority vanity without a doubt. Like you can't say, doing bicep curls, like You can spin that into health, yeah, bone density, and there is that component. Like my bones are pretty fucking dense. I had them measured once, probably because I've lifted weights for more than half my life now, consistently, like consistently. Even when I had surgeries, dude, like I would be in the gym like a couple days later because it's pitched as this thing that's like a good thing to do. But when you let go of that, you start seeing things as they are, and the reality is like it's it's not. And I had this conversation with someone, and I mentioned how like going to the gym is selfish, and they were like, "Yeah, but," and we kind of went back and forth a little bit, and I'm like, it's not selfish in like necessarily this negative stigmatized way that we do it, but when you think about selfish being like thinking about yourself, doing something solely for yourself versus doing something for not solely yourself, going to the gym is an incredibly selfish act in that context, in a sense. And I'm not saying like, taking care of your health, and I'm also, this is kind of like taking care of your health is a selfish act in a sense, not with this negative connotation, but it is involved. And I guess you could say then that it's not in the sense that someone, who is super unhealthy, there's there's repercussions to that also that are external. So there is like a healthy balance between, because if you were just, a bag of shit to yourself, you have to go to the doctor and, I'm not going to get into like details of being unhealthy and the issues, the selfish component of that, but it's just been a different way of thinking about it for me. And as more considerations come into play, actions change, priorities change, and all of that good stuff. But it's interesting how people will pitch, going to the gym as like a good, oh, I do it for my mental health. But like, because I hear that a lot of times, oh, when I'm feeling down, I was like, woke up not feeling great, went to the gym, felt better. But it's like, yeah, but your need to go to the gym, or the reason that you feel better because of the gym, is the reason you were feeling bad before you were going to the gym, in a sense. Like, as much as, yes, there's the endorphins and things, there is, the thinking about yourself that's just like you just flipped the trigger thing, or the pedometer, from like not feeling great about yourself to feeling better about yourself because of an action you did for yourself to like improve yourself. So anyway, I had some other thoughts about the identity stuff, but I'm gonna stop talking now.
That's funny, and it's a perfect example about of how something that is good for us can become another thing that we identify with, and then use to destroy our lives. I mean, and you know this because I mean, how many people who eat health food judge those who don't? Right? How many people who focus on their health and go to the gym judge those who don't? How many people who quit smoking judge people who continue to smoke? And it's so very interesting, and this is something I really try not to do. I don't judge anybody on their health in any way whatsoever. We're all kinda doing the best we can based on the level of awareness that we're able to maintain, which is also kind of the best we can, because I genuinely do believe that it has very little to do with this disciplined, regimented, got to do this many things per day, got to eat this many times per day, got to drink this much water per day, got to exercise this much per day, got to watch your calories, got to watch how much you're burning, you got to watch, I'm not a fan of that mentality because I think that with awareness, when you slow down, you actually feel your body. You actually have a relationship with your health. And in that, you have an intuitive sense of how you should stretch, that you should drink more water, perhaps, that you need more fresh air. Like you can feel it in yourself. And I think that again, I have more faith in the intelligence that we are than in this attempt to create a standardized model for healthy living for everybody. Right? Because I don't think that can be done. I think healthy is so subjective. I'll give you an example. There's an old actor, or there was an old actor. He died long ago. His name was George Burns, and anybody who's older will recognize George Burns and the saying "Good night, Gracie," which was how They used to close off their old TV show. I think it was back in the 50s. He was a small little guy, and he lived to about 100 years old. And he smoked big, fat cigars all the time, all the time. And people would often go like, "Well, that's terrible for you." He lived to 100. He lived to 100. And so the question would be, or the question to me is, if he enjoyed those things and he had stopped smoking them and still lived to the same amount of time, was that good for him or bad for him? If he enjoyed them and it wouldn't have caused him to lose any of the years of his life, is that not healthier because of the more enjoyment in his life, right? The higher quality of living. It's a valid argument. What do we mean by healthy? Do we mean living in such a state of stress over every calorie that we eat that we don't enjoy our lives or anything that we're taking in? Because that doesn't sound healthy. That sounds obsessive. It sounds terrifying. It sounds like you're always trying to do the right thing, or you may die. You may lose a minute of your life, a minute you're not enjoying. So it really comes down to, what do we mean by healthy? And we actually have I think a community topics episode on healthy living. So go and check that out. I don't remember what we said in there, but it was probably somewhere along those lines. I wanted to throw in a quick announcement because this is a short episode of Dualistic Unity Raw. We are expanding in a number of ways. It's really exciting. We have Oren Allen, who is now on our sales team and in our administration team. He is our director of creative advertising and education. So he's going to be helping us to reach out to the cannabis community, bringing more people into the show, into the community, into the Discord, all of that. Very exciting. We have somebody working with us who is going through university at the moment. She is also going to be helping us and hosting a new podcast about this podcast and all the wonderful stuff that we do here with Oren in the very near future. So keep an eye out for that. As we are expanding, and again, please keep in mind that everything that we do at Dualistic Unity is a reflection of our enthusiasm for the path that we're on, the journey that we're on individually. We don't do this for a huge amount of money, and nobody is ever going to make a huge amount of money working for Dualistic Unity. There will always be a limit to how much we can get paid per month, and everything else goes back into growing this conversation, goes back in to continuing this ripple, putting out the energy that we are taking in so that way we continue the cycle. Because if we're not selfishly taking care of ourselves individually, then we can selflessly take care of each other, which is a lot more fun, in my opinion. So that said, we are looking for an editor. We spend an obscene amount of time editing video because not only do we have episodes 5 or 6 days per week, we also do Patreon groups. We do community topics. We do other things in between. And frankly, there's just a lot of goddamn video. There's a lot. And we spend a lot of our time doing it, which limits the amount of time that we could be taking to go and reach out to other podcasts and go out and create other events, do the other stuff, basically, because at the moment, most of our time is spent staring at the computer as it renders, which is brutal. It's not that we just stare at it. We do other stuff while it renders, which just goes to show you how busy we are. So that said, if you appreciate the vision, if you see what we're trying to do, if you feel what we're trying to do, and you have some editing skill, you would like to help us out in editing some of these episodes and getting them online, you would actually like to become our editor in the long term, we would love to talk to you. We can't pay you right now. Straight up, just letting you know, we don't have any money. But as soon as we do have money, which we see happening in the very near future, you will get paid for the work that you do. You will also be a part of Dualistic Unity, the podcast, and the corporation behind that podcast, which means that there's a potential for ownership shares because we want you to be a part of this family. So keep in mind, I'm not looking for somebody who's money hungry. I'm not looking for somebody who's going to do the bare minimum. Well, what do you want me to do? I want you to come to the table with ideas. I want you to come to the table with enthusiasm. If you feel this, if this is something that you've wanted to be a part of your whole fucking life, you're like, I know how to edit. Jesus Christ, get in touch with us because we love that energy. That's exactly the energy that we bring to the table. So get in touch with us through the website, Instagram, Discord. You'll find us. No worries. And that's the end of that announcement. Andrew.
Hell yes. And to be clear with the payment and stuff, like, it's plenty to live your life, like, in an awesome way. It's just like you're not gonna get to the point where you're, buying 7 cars and all that shit. Like, it's enough to live. Because if someone's like, "Well, is it gonna be am I gonna have to have a second job?" It's like, "No, this is to cover everything that you need, and, some extra stuff here and there, all that good stuff." But, yeah, and Oren and Julia, fucking pumped for you guys to be on the team. Yeah, I won't add to the announcements necessarily, but I did want to get back to the
I got one
go
more,
for it.
and then you can get back to that. Twitch. Anybody who's watching on Twitch, we have new perks. There's a bunch of like emotes and fun little pictures and shit that you can use if you subscribe on Twitch. Not only that, but Twitch subscribers don't see the advertisements. And so if you're on Twitch, we'd really appreciate the subscription. And we'd love you to like spice up the comment section with whatever the new perks are. Likewise, if you know anything about Twitch and you have any suggestions, let us know because I do not.
As do I not. And if you're in watching, like, feel free to comment stuff. Always feel free to ask questions or just comment or just, say whatever you want. Andrew, I don't think your glasses are cool. Or Ray, I hate that shirt so much. Whatever you want to say, go for it. Getting yeah. We both just imagine we show up one day, dude, shirtless, and or just like film one in our underwear. That might, yeah, that might bring in the wrong crowd for the wrong reasons. We'll most likely stay clothed for all episodes, though. Never say never.
Especially if it's hot.
Exactly, right? It's like, what is this? Yeah, clothes. Clothes are funny. We can get into that. I did want to keep with the healthy living. Maybe they'll tie together somehow. But the subjectivity of health, like to your point, the guy lived to 100 with a cigar. Like, that clicked. Something clicked there because like cigar, it's like always has cigarettes, any sort of smoking thing, like it leans negative. It's like, oh, no good or bad, but like you could still throw things into certain categories, but nothing's in either category in objectivity. Like those categories don't exist because it's not just what it is, it's how much, it's the context of your life, it's everything going on. Shout out QR code right here, healthy living. That was a fun episode. We got into a lot of different components, even some like drug stuff too. That was fun. But how subjective it is. It's insanely subjective. And so when you're thinking about your own health, but we want to look outside. It's like outside in is how we perceive health. Like I'm going to listen to a podcast, I'm going to follow someone, I'm going to follow this page, I'm going to get into this diet, that diet, be this type of person, be that type of person, but it's never internal, inside out, like thinking about what is actually healthy for me. Because let's say health, there is no blanket healthy, unhealthy. It's literally for every single person, there is a different variation of healthy. So how do you figure that out? It has to be inside out. It has to come from you actually paying attention and being sensitive to everything that you're doing, actually paying attention to what's going on. This food here, I have this idea of like based on general idea of, food pyramid type thing that like there's healthy foods and unhealthy foods. But if that didn't exist, if it wasn't like, carrots are healthy, cake is unhealthy, it's like if those labels weren't there, you would just have to pay attention to how you felt, And it's like, okay, so you eat a bunch of cake. It's like feels really good at first, but then it doesn't feel very good afterwards. Or maybe you only have a little bit and there isn't too much of a fluctuation, but you're paying close attention to what you're actually feeling. Because say, carrots, my brother is allergic to carrots. So he eats a carrot. It's like pays close attention. Holy shit, he's having this whole fucking reaction. It's like, all right, don't do that again. But we don't do the inside out. We don't think like, how does this actually make me feel and be intentional about like paying attention, not just to the taste, but to then the post-taste, post-meal feelings. Because if there isn't the objective healthy and unhealthy, you have to do that. But if there is the objective healthy, unhealthy, you just have to do the things that are healthy and don't do the things that are unhealthy, despite maybe an quote unquote unhealthy thing being something that you would enjoy and maybe would actually be healthy. And there's just a misunderstanding about it. There's been reasons that people have pitched it as being unhealthy, but because you enjoy it, but you perceive it as unhealthy, you're not actually enjoying it as much as you would if there wasn't the label. If it was just, how is this actually feeling? How is this actually impacting me? And I'm sort of subtly talking about cannabis just because someone, again, like I get comments on social media of people, talking when I post a cannabis. Like I posted a gummy video yesterday. I took one at the airport. God, it was just like funny fucking around, filming as I go, and then it turned into me actually coming really close to missing my flight. But I haven't really posted much about cannabis, and someone comments something like, "Oh, just admit you're addicted, bro." But okay, let's say that I really enjoy it, like the guy who smoked cigars. Let's say I do it every day. Okay, dude, commenter, let's break this down. Like, what impact does this actually have? Like, what if it doesn't shorten my life at all? It's like, well, and then it just comes down to like, well, it's bad to be addicted to stuff. It's like, and that's a different conversation because then it's like, well, why do you think that? It's like, just because, and then that's kind of like the objective healthy, unhealthy. Like, it's unhealthy to what? Do something consistently, do something within a 24-hour period each and every day. Say you smoke every day, but you smoke just like once a day. Just take a couple hits of a joint at night, before bed, whatever. It's like, is just that act bad? Is it bad? Their phone might be ringing. I don't know if you can hear it. Like, is drinking a tiny sip of beer once a day, does that mean you're addicted? Like, and some people might think that it is, but it's a totally different conversation. I haven't really thought about, you know, addiction being equals bad. Like, there's kind of that generalized sort of statement, but what do we mean by addiction? Like, can't live without it, need it? Like, because what does that mean? I'm addicted to water? Like, I
Or clothing.
exactly. So it's kind of a different conversation at that point.
I am straight up addicted to clothing. Absolutely. I feel just naked without it. It's really uncomfortable, But it's funny because we call them addictions, but they're things that we've just more or less attached to, and that's the danger, is the attachment, right? Like, I like smoking weed. I went years without smoking weed, or smoking weed extremely rarely, and I was fine. I enjoyed myself. I enjoyed my life. I was, just as talkative as I am now. My eyes hurt more, admittedly, because it's, glaucoma and all that. But I have no, if people don't smoke weed, I'm like, yeah, it's fine. Don't smoke weed. But if that person doesn't smoke weed and they find out I smoke weed, they're like, oh, why do you do that? And why is that? Well, again, it's the fact that you're not validating what I'm doing. You're doing this thing that I'm going to say is unhealthy. And if you're like, yeah, but so is sugar, so is car exhaust, so is judging people, right? Like, all of these things, these are all addictive things. Driving is addictive. You don't have to drive by any means. Most of us don't have to drive, right? We live in a place where we could commute. We live in an area where we could find another way to work. Driving is very much one of those things that, because it's available, we do it. We don't have to do it. You wouldn't tell somebody that they're addicted to driving just because they choose to have a car when they don't need one, right? And so with cannabis, especially, like, for me, and this, like, I smoke cannabis because otherwise my eyes start to hurt, and I start to get nauseous, and that gets annoying after a little while. I also smoke cannabis because I really enjoy it. I really enjoy cannabis, but I'm also aware that if I'm tense, I'll smoke way more cannabis and then I'll suffer for it. Like I'll get all congested and shit, and I'll get, you know how it is when you got the lung butter and, and your sinuses are clogged with basically just THC. So there's a consequence to that. You feel it in your lungs, you feel it in your throat, right? And so there I'm going, I will acknowledge I'm out of alignment. Like I'm indulging. And I'm indulging as a response to the shit that I'm going through and a lack of awareness about that indulgence because of the shit that I'm going through. So it kind of all ties together. But as soon as I'm just like, oh man, I'm smoking a lot of weed, you know, so like I'm like, and therefore I'm going to stop smoking weed forever. I just recognize like, oh well, fuck, I'm smoking a lot more weed than I need to. A lot more weed than I need to. And same as I'm drinking a lot more coffee than I need to. You know, I'm driving around a lot more than I need to. I'm eating a lot more than I need to. You know, it's always just that going overboard. And then we swing hard the other way. We're like, oh, I'm a piece of shit and I gotta stop doing this if I'm ever gonna be better. It's like that has nothing to there's a such thing as just an organic swing. Right. Like that really is it. And so I just wanted to mention to everybody out there, we have a retreat. It's coming up. If all of this talk about pot smoking, you're like, yeah, I'm the factor that really matters in this. It's not about the cannabis. It's not about the quote unquote drug. You know, I understand that it's up to me to maintain moderation, to maintain awareness, to be responsible, to do all that, and I still enjoy the devil's lettuce. Well, if that's the case, then come to a retreat where we smoke a lot of the devil's lettuce. And we have one coming up in Virginia Beach, February 1st to 5th. It's coming up in 3 weeks. That is great. There's only a few tickets left. These events are not just a retreat, and in fact, they're not a retreat in the way that you might think about them at all. They are an opportunity to just be yourself. And what I really enjoy about these retreats is that there's no schedule. So we're not going to be like, hey, it's 11 o'clock. It's time for group yoga. You know, it's 3 o'clock. Now we take an adventure hike. You know, none of that. We break up into small groups sometimes. Sometimes we all come together. The whole point is that we are all coming together, that we are just being ourselves. There's no schedule. You take the space you need. We had somebody come to a retreat and they just slept the first 2 days. They came out, they ate something, they went back to bed. Why? Because they were fucking exhausted. And when they got up, they were greeted by everybody else who had just been waiting to greet them, and they were excited they were there. And it was an awesome, awesome event. Some people can't even stay for the whole thing, and they leave a day early, and that's just fine too, because they leave knowing that they got the most out of it because they wanted to get the most out of it. But that said, and I want to throw this out there because it's important. As I mentioned earlier, we're very early in the Dualistic Unity expansion. We're very early in terms of we just don't focus on profit. And so a lot of these events, pretty much all of these events, all of these events are done without profit in mind. Like we really do take in the ticket price and put it all into that event. You know, for the location, for the food, for the substances, for a bunch of other stuff. So if you're coming to these events, it's not just that you're paying for a ticket. You are investing in Dualistic Unity, not just the company or the retreats, the Ripple. You're helping us keep these events going. You're helping us get to the next event and the next event where somebody else who at one point just needed that space can get to. So you are helping us keep this going. It's not just a ticket. It's an investment in the community. It's an investment in the Ripple. It's an investment in the conversation. And we really appreciate it. So if you can join us in Virginia Beach, we would love to see you. If you can't join us in Virginia Beach, you can help us by creating a video about Dualistic Unity, what you think of it, what you've learned from it. Even just take some clips from the podcast, create a video, put it online, social media. You can boost it if you want to. You don't have to. And that helps the podcast. That helps bring more people into the conversation. And you could win a ticket to our California mini retreat, which is coming up on April 11th to April 15th. It's going to be near Big Bear Lake. This one's going to be dope. Virginia Beach is also going to be dope because it's on the fucking beach. And there's a giant oversized chessboard. If you don't know how to play chess, I will teach you how to play chess. And we're going to do it high and likely on microdosing mushrooms.
Fuck yes. Yeah, definitely hop in there. And it helps. As you said, it's very much an investment in the situation because like for so many things, like profit is almost the last thing we think about. It's like we have ideas, we think about stuff, and then it's like, oh yeah, yeah, we do need we need some money, you know. But it's very much an afterthought. It's like and I can't wait for the day that it doesn't have to be any consideration. It's just like that's what it is, and like don't have to think about money at all. Cause like we don't like thinking about money stuff. We like thinking about what we can do with things. And so, yeah, the retreats are fucking awesome. We're baked most of the time. It's a lot of fun, almost the entire time, and it's a fucking blast. A lot of fun and a little bit of microdosing action for sure as well to supplement the relaxation. And towards the end, some higher dosages if that's something you're into or in for. But yeah, a lot of fun. Hop in there and yeah, along with the video situation with the making videos about podcast tagging us and entering for basically a chance to win a whole retreat ticket that's like $1,800 value. Get those videos out there, but then also just share things. Like if you tag me, Ray, Dualistic Unity on Instagram, like we'll share that on our story. We really appreciate it. And it helps a ton. So if you have an episode that like a lot of people will throw in Discord, like, oh, this episode was awesome. Like feel free to just toss it on a story and we'll reshare because that helps get the word out there. Maybe even say a couple words like this part of this really, really resonated, something like that. But anyway, that's good for announcements, I think. What something he said before with identity and like maybe doing something for a prolonged period of time and then you can kind of shift it quickly when you recognize like there's such a drastic difference obviously in identifying as someone who does a certain thing versus recognizing a tendency towards doing something because as you identify as it then becomes a part of you and then that sort of impacts the actions that you take because you're now labeling yourself as that and so it identifying as it is on the opposite side of recognizing or on the other end of the spectrum of recognizing it as a tendency. Oh, I've been doing this for 3 months. And just that being something that I've done and then being able to, zoom out and realize like, oh yeah, there was a lot of shift, a lot of change, a lot of things happening, a lot of stress going on. That makes sense. And then it's you know, even easier to shift right now. But depending on how you identify, like, depending on how you identify, if you identify as it turns it then into something. And then it's like the shift can't happen now. And I have to then change myself in order to change that thing. And the focus becomes me like, oh, now I have to change myself because I'm this and I have to let go of this thing. And it turns into this whole process. It becomes a process of letting go as opposed to letting go only being something you can do right now or shifting things only being something you can do right now. Like you can't go from a stressed person to a relaxed person. You can only relax right now or stress right now. You can't go from a tense person to a relaxed person or from a relaxed person to a tense person. You can only relax right now and you can only tense right now. But as you build the story, then turns it into something that demands a process. It demands a sequence. It demands a series of events, like we were talking about on episode 9 that'll be out soon. Sirius being this root of like something done in series. And so as you take yourself seriously, your identity seriously, your idea of yourself seriously, and all these behaviors that now you're pinning onto you, it causes this need to let go of it in series, in a sense, as opposed to being able to just shift something right now. If you recognize, oh, that's behavior been doing for a while, been investing in for a while, and it there and then you're able to see the reasons because you're not so locked into it and zoomed in on the situation. You see maybe more of the reasons. And it's like, oh, this actually makes sense. And then you can shift in a moment. Like right now. It's not, I got to figure out how to let this thing go and like start with this and then do this and then do this. And it's like, maybe that's how it plays out, but it happens from you right now, recognizing it. And it's like really, really, really hard to do that if you're identifying and then labeling yourself as a lazy person, an anxious person, aggressive person, an angry person, a worried person, or even a happy person, because then as that shifts, there's going to be the resistance to whatever, and then that can cause a spiral.
Well said. Absolutely. I just wanted to give a shout out to everybody in the comment section this morning. Thank you for being here. We got about 4 minutes left of the show. We are going to be continuing on Patreon. After this, it's one of our tier 2 calls. It's a Thursday, so it's an hour and a half. We're going to be shooting the shit before we get ready for the episode of Being High that we will record this afternoon. That's going to be a lot of fun. I love those episodes. It's just because, again, we get to get high and have a conversation, which is always a blast. I have to mention, just because I brought it up early in the episode, and just don't judge yourself. Like there's just such an importance to recognizing that judging yourself is very different than discerning habits. You can become aware of and discern habits that you have. You can look at your behavior in a way that doesn't make you diminished. See? It's like, oh my God, I've been really self-absorbed lately. Now, if you take that in, you'll go, huh, and you'll change. You see, it's just the act of taking that in. But then if you take that and you go, fuck, I really got to do something about that. What can I do about that? That is still self-absorption. You're still thinking about yourself. Right? This isn't helping you at all. What it's doing is it's actually distorting who you would be otherwise. And who you would be is already the best that you can do. It's so funny because we think we have to keep ourselves within this realm of checks and balances. Like if you're not constantly making sure that you're not doing the wrong thing, that you're going to be doing the wrong thing. My God, I got to be judging my progress all the time, or I could do anything. If I wasn't immediately beating myself up for not expressing myself, I might just go up and scream in that woman's face. It's like, why would you do that? You wouldn't do that. So why sit there thinking to yourself, like, oh God, I'm going to say the wrong thing. Oh God, they're not going to like me. Oh God, they're going to think I'm a monster. Like, why would you do that? Other than just habit. Habit. It's just habit. That's really all it is. And if you can just take that in and not judge yourself for that habit, if you can understand that that habit or that addiction is a coping mechanism. That's how you deal with uncertainty, with the stress of uncertainty. Right? And as long as you are stressed out by uncertainty, you're going to rely on that coping mechanism. But that's the trick. Just as I was saying earlier, deal with the stress. Stop trying to force your way into being a certain type of person. Let go of the things that are causing you to try and cope in a way that's distorting who you are. Recognize how much of that stress is just created by your reaction to uncertainty and your knee-jerk response to reach for identity. I don't know what's happening. I am this. That's a habit. It's an addictive habit. It's a comfortable habit. It's something that's always going to be there as long as the environment is as stressful as it is, which is something that we're talking about on the collective as well as the individual. So it really just comes down to just stop judging yourself, because that judgment causes more stress, which causes more coping mechanisms, which causes more judgment, which causes more stress. And it's a vicious fucking circle. So it can stop now with you.
Well said. I know we're coming to the end here, but that self-absorption, it's like being self-absorbed and then judging yourself for being self-absorbed is just the same. It's just continued self-absorption. There's not even like a gap almost even. It's like there is in the recognition, and then it just continues on because you're like, and therefore I'm a piece of shit. Like negative self-idea, like negative self-talk is still self-absorption, which pins that as less of like a victim sort of thing. It's like, because there's an underlying almost like, if you think you're a piece of shit, you're like, it's almost like good. It's like you're less egotistical in a sense. There's like a weird thing there, but both of them our self-absorption. Like both sides are equal self-absorption, but we just think of someone who, loves themselves, thinks very highly of themselves as having a big ego. Someone who thinks they're the worst piece of shit and shits on themselves all the time also has a huge ego in that same sort of sense. And it's just how frequently you think about yourself. It's not like thinking highly of yourself. It's just how often you do it or how much you think it matters or means. But I know we're at time. I had a thought. I wanted to get into some death stuff. You were kind of thinking of talking about uncertainty, and I'm editing that episode 9. That's going to be really good. And we got into like death being the ultimate sort of uncertainty. Does it actually happen? But anyway, we'll save that for another conversation.
Or in fact, the Patreon call right
Yes.
after this, because that sounds like a lot of fun. If you haven't joined Patreon, everybody, it's fucking worth it. The best stuff in Dualistic Unity is on Patreon, and I've just gotten back into posting old videos from the archives. There are thousands of hours of group discussions on Patreon. You can check them out. You can go way back to when the podcast first started and watch our first couple of groups. It's so fucking interesting, just because again, we've come so far. So if that's something that you're interested in, check out Patreon. We're going to adjourn here, and we'll see you all in a few minutes.